With a loud metallic sound, the bear trap swung around Uril's foot. Uril and his two friends Youngie and Brill were just about to go back home. They had been out collecting mushrooms. With their baskets full, they were longing for a night's dinner. But now Uril couldn't move. He only screamed and moaned from the metallic jaws biting down on his ankle really hard. "What on earth? Is that a bear trap?" said Brill. "I don't know, but it hurts so much," screamed Uril back in response. Brill and Youngie examined the trap while their friend waited impatiently. It was a strange device, a bit different from traditional bear traps they had seen before. This one had sharp edges and even barbs. Brill and Youngie exchanged looks at each other with question marks written all over them. "I don't like the faces you're making," said Uril, while he lied on his back and waiting for his friends to pull this thing away from his foot. "I don't think we can pull this thing off you," answered Youngie. "If we do, we will tear every little tendon and muscle you have into shreds. After that, you will have to amputate the foot. Whoever made this gave the traps barbs that is now hooked into your flesh, making it hard to pull it out of the body. Why would someone do that?" But no one had an answer. Animals can't lose themselves from traps like this anyways. No point in having barbs that is hooking into the flesh. They all knew that. So instead, they planned to dig out the chain out of the ground and carry everything back to their village. There, they would be able to lose the grip without destroying the foot. But the chain wasn't buried in the ground. Instead, it went across a big tree. After that, it had been melted together. You couldn't carry the trap with you unless you cut down the tree. And it was a big tree. If they even had an axe with them, it would have taken almost a day to chop down the tree. "Now I really want to see the person who set up this trap," said Uril. His anger had killed the pain. "I agree. You don't need this much effort to trap a bear." Youngie followed in. "Unless you're not hunting bears," Brill said and destroyed the angry mode. The two others looked strange at him. Brill continued. "There are no bears in this part of the wood. We all know that. Or let's say there is no one hunting in this part of the woods." "What are you implying?" asked Uril. "I don't think I want to meet the person who built this," answered Brill back. It became really quiet among them while darkness came closer and closer. In an hour or two, the sun would be gone. "So, if this hunter isn't hunting bears, what is he hunting then?" Uril asked, still a bit angry. "Us," Brill answered. "That is absurd," Youngie said, shaking his head. Brill answered back. "I never really believed those stories the other villagers told me, but a lot of people have family members that have gone missing from venturing into this forest. Rumors are spreading between house and town about cults, huge lurking monsters, or that they simply got lost. But when I look at how this trap is set up..." Then Brill stood quiet for a moment looking at the scenery, the metal chain that went around the huge tree and the teeth that dug deep into Uril's foot. "It feels like it's made to catch human prey," Brill finished. Uril and Youngie looked at each other. "You're crazy," said Uril. "Don't scare us like that." "I think we should cut off your foot and carry you back to town before it gets pitch black dark," said Brill. "No way!" Uril screamed. Youngie jumped in and tried to calm Uril down. Yelling and shouting never helped. "It helps for the pain, and maybe the one that set up this stupid trap can hear me, so I can tell him a thing or two," Uril answered, still screaming. Brill wasn't listening. The sun was at the edge of the treetops, soon gone. It was about a mile left to home sweet home. They could carry Uriel for sure, but only if they cut off his foot, and it didn't sound like that was going to happen. Uriel's voice echoed in the forest hills and birds took flight. Now owls and bugs joined in for the night creepy sounds. "We have to do something." Brill tried once more with his friends, but Uriel was too angry to talk to. "Hush, I hear something," Youngie suddenly said. Youngie stood tall and stretched his neck out into the night, trying to get a good sight. Yes, indeed, Youngie had seen someone. Between the trees, someone had gone closer into them. It was not a human. Youngie was sure of that. Before Youngie was able to say anything, something pushed hard into his left shoulder. It rotated him backward, but he was able to remain standing. It took him a second or two to realize he had been shot with an arrow, not something you hunted birds with. Panic spread within the group. Uriel couldn't move from the spot, and Youngie couldn't move his arm. They had wasted too much time at this place arguing on what to do. Brill made a last attempt to pull the trap apart. "No, it hurts too much." Uriel stopped him. "We are going to die if we stay here," Brill said, for the first time angry, looking straight into the eyes of his childhood friend. Uriel never answered. He didn't need to. Brill could see that he was scared, paralyzed. Youngie only looked at the arrow in his body and kept screaming. It looked like his eyes were going to pop out of his skull in any moment. "We are just like scared chickens," Brill thought. Then the man came closer. They were no threat to him. He could walk in on them. Soon he would. He was now close enough that Brill could see him coming out, but only as a figure in the darkness. Brill jumped to his feet and grabbed Youngie under his right shoulder and lifted him up. Then they ran, or Brill tried to make a move for it with his wounded friend Youngie. "Wait, wait, wait! Don't leave me! Don't leave me!" Uriel shouted behind them. After they were gone, he turned his head around and looked straight into the face he had asked for. There he stood, the madman who had set the trap. It was a tall old man, long white beard with a mouth somewhere in there, just like how this trap was covered in moss. They never said anything to each other. The hunter just walked past Uriel in the direction his friends had run off in. The man looked down on the ground quite a lot. He was tracking them. Brill and Youngie didn't know where they were. Uriel was the one that knew most of this forest. If the sun had been up, they would know how to get home. Youngie kept making heavy, loud breathing sounds all the time. Brill didn't blame him. He didn't blame Uriel for being angry at the situation either. But it didn't matter. He put his hands on Youngie's mouth and tried to make him shut up. "I can't breathe," Youngie said loud to make his friends hear him, because he didn't like this, and when he didn't like things, he had to make sure people heard it. That's how Youngie's world worked. "Quiet! We have to be quiet!" Brill tried. Then Brill realized that Youngie didn't understand the danger they were in. He was in too much of a shock, just like how Uriel had been in. Brill was sure that Uriel was doomed for. He didn't understand what Youngie was saying, a lot of strange blabbering, but suddenly he realized that he wouldn't survive with him. He would have to abandon him, just like how they abandoned Uriel. He could hear how things were moving behind them, not close, but close enough, and Youngie kept talking nonsense. Brill waved his hand in front of Youngie's face, without reaction. He was lost to shock. Most likely Youngie didn't know where he was. Brill cried a tear when he walked backwards away from his best friend. Youngie only stood there, looking from side to side, saying small words. Then he knelt down on the spot. Brill turned around and ran with everything he got. The huge man came around the tree corner in great haste. He could hear how the third one was running away, abandoning his friend. "A smart one," Madman Allen said. Then he chopped off Youngie's head. "Now the real hunt begins." Brill didn't care where he ended up. He pushed 3 twigs away from him and moved forward as fast as he could. He didn't know if this was the best strategy, but he was a good runner. He didn't see anything apart from 2 meters in front of him. He could accidentally run off a cliff or into the mouth of a monster. He knew that, of course, but he didn't know what else to do, so he gambled none of that would happen. He jumped down behind a big stone and tried to listen. Bad idea. He only heard his own heavy breathing. That really sounded. So he kept his mouth wide open to silence some of that sound. It worked now. He could hear things again. He did hear something. Someone was running too, and good too, steady and fast steps. Then suddenly, just 1 meter next to him, the tallest man Brill had ever seen came flying through the forest. He stopped maybe 10 meters in front of Brill, looking forward, trying to find what was sitting in behind him. The hunter had run past Brill without noticing it. Then the man looked down on the ground. Then he looked on the road ahead of him. Then on the ground once more. He looked at the 3 twigs to the left, and then Brill realized that he was tracking him, and soon he would realize that he only needed to turn around. What should he do? It felt so nice to sit down. Then the large man turned around. He was quick to react and immediately moved his right arm in a circle behind him, building up speed, and threw his huge axe towards Brill. From out of nowhere, Brill reacted too, moving his head slightly to the side. That came out of nowhere. That saved his life. And from out of nowhere, he got back on his feet and started to run, what he felt like would be downhill. He should have taken the axe while he'd lie there next to him. No, he did the right thing, he realized. It would only be something heavy for him to carry, and he wouldn't survive combat against this human monster, even with a weapon. The ground under his feet started to tilt more and more. His running speed started to grow faster and faster. Then he wasn't really running anymore, rather falling. He was running downwards a rocky slope, jumping from one stone to another stone further down the slope. He didn't need to push himself that hard either. Just extend your leg and let the gravitation and forward motion carry you onward. He really moved forward with great speed. He was almost flying downward. But this was the most dangerous thing he had ever done his entire life. One misstep and he could lose his balance. If he fell, with the speed he built up, he would crash face first into the rocky ground. Then again, behind him was also certain death. The madman wanted to kill him, but Brill's pursuer wasn't crazy enough to follow him down this road. When the downhill started to flat out, Brill kept running 5 meters and collapsed on his shaky legs. Behind him, the man was walking down slow and steady. He used his hands to push against the big stone Brill had been jumping on top of. The slope was about 50 meters. The hunter stopped moving and grabbed for his bow. Brill got up on his feet fast. He couldn't really run. His legs were shaking too much. They were used to brace the fall impact from running downwards over stones. Back on vertical footing, they were quite stiff. But the option was to get hit by an arrow, so they better make a move. Brill got behind a tree just in time once more. He had been watching death fly past him several times now. If that was going to stop, he had to put some serious distance between him and his hunter. This might be the best opportunity to do so, now that the hunter was walking down the slope slowly. And the distance between them grew rapid. Brill was once running with everything he got. Darkness was his cover. The forest was his hiding place. And after running until he felt truly alone, he sat down on a stone to rest. Now, he must be safe, Brill thought. But he wasn't. Slowly, he realized something very horrible. He was lost. It was pitch black in every direction he turned his head. Sure, he had run away from the man who wanted to murder him. But for what? Brill had no idea in what direction his village could be found. But the man who hunted Brill would eventually track him down. He could track even if he was running, so eventually he would turn up with the axe once more. "There's just no way I will survive this night," Brill said with his face resting in his hands. His two best friends was surely dead, and Brill guessed that he would soon join them. It felt nice to sit down for a while, waiting for your killer to come out of the darkness to kill you, listening to the night birds and rippling river. River! Brill got back on his feet. "You can't track my steps if I swim in the river," Brill said proudly. Also, he knew of a big forest river that connected to a town he knew of. It didn't take him long to find the riverbank. Once he did, he jumped in the water and started to swim in the direction the water flowed. "Unless there is a big fish in these waters, I might survive this night," Brill told himself. But nothing came out of the water to eat him. Instead, he followed the water current wherever it took him, hopefully out of this forest nightmare. Sometime later, Alan was standing on the river bank, looking at the tracks he had followed. This was the end of his hunt, the first person who got away from him. Alan knew where this water would take his prey, to a small town with lots of people. If the young man rallied enough people, Alan might be the one who got hunted. But it was a big forest and he could move deeper into it, lay low in some cave until the pesky people looking for him got tired of it. And 2 human bodies would be food for months.